if you're making 30% of the area median income, which would be an annual income of $29,430. So let's just pretend we're saying 30, just under 30,000. Your hourly income is $14.15 an hour. By that measure of not paying more than 30%, your maximum monthly rent is $735.
And today, this is going to be an interesting conversation. We are going to be talking about affordable housing here in Franklin County. And I know that I've got a lot of questions, and I've got two people who know a lot about what is happening, what the problem is, and some ways to address it. Joining me today are Cindy Flaherty and Cathy Levine. And I'm going to ask each of you to go ahead and introduce yourself. Cathy, you want to start off?
Sure. I'm Cathy Levine. I'm a member of Congregation Tifereth Israel, a conservative Jewish synagogue on the Near East Side of Columbus. And I am a leader of our bread team. I am part of the bread organization. I'm a former co-president of bread. And I'm on several bread committees. Previously, before I retired, I ran a consumer health advocacy organization, working for affordable, high quality health care for all. And that's me.
Very good.
And I live in Bexley.
Very good. Cindy.
Hi, my name is Cindy Flaherty. I live in Upper Arlington. I attend St. Josephine Bakita Parish in the north side of Columbus, which I sort of migrated to when other Catholic churches merged. And I've been a member of Bread since about 2022. And I was involved in the Housing Committee of Bread, and I'm still involved with my congregation, helping to lead our social justice effort, and also with Bread, I'm currently the vice president. So I'm really happy to be here today. In my professional career, I worked in affordable housing. At the Ohio Housing Finance Agency, at a statewide nonprofit called Ohio Capital Corporation for Housing, and at Fannie Mae. So I've worked across a broad range of affordable housing issues.
Very good. Very good. So you both mentioned bread. Can you share a few words about what is bread? I'm assuming that's an acronym, and
Yes.
what is the acronym, and give us a sense of what bread is and what you all do.
BREAD stands for Building Responsibility, Equality, and Dignity. It's a coalition founded in 1996. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and we're a coalition of 40 very diverse religious congregations that hold public officials accountable to implement proven solutions to serious community problems. So, most congregations are very involved in doing service work, charity work, you have different names for it, feeding the poor, doing food collections. Many of us feel that we can just keep doing that, but we're never solving the problem. So Bread came together out of an urgency to go upstream and solve the problems that create the victims of social problems.
Okay.
One of the key things about Bread is that we are local. We bring our local people power to bear on issues that affect our community members directly, and we bring those concerns and propose solutions to our local government officials at the city and the county.
Okay.
including school boards, other agencies, not just county commissioners and city council.
Okay.
And we're focused on Franklin County.
Franklin County. Okay. And how is bread funded? Where's your funding come from?
Great question. We like to own our own organizations. So the bulk of our funding comes from the dues that congregations pay. And then in the late spring and summer, we do a support drive. We do a congregational support drive. We ask every network member to invest at least $200 in the work of bread. And we also go to corporate supporters. We seek support from corporations based on our mutual interest in creating a more vibrant community in Columbus.
It is is bread a national model? Are there other bread organizations across the country, or is this unique to Columbus?
Bread is an independent organization, but we are part of a national network.
Okay.
A national network is called DART, the Direct Action Research and Training. And most of the DART organizations are in southern states or kind of Midwest states, like we have a bunch in Kansas and a lot in the South and West Virginia and Virginia. And there are other networks like DART in other parts of the country.
And they each have their own unique names. So I wish I could bring some of them to mind right now, but I just love, they
among the DART organizations.
Around the DART organizations, they each have a name that means something locally. So
okay.
Here's one. In Knoxville, what was it?
Justice Knox.
Justice Knox, yes.
For us, it's bread rises.
Oh, nice. Very good. Yeah, I saw what you did there. So how does the issue of affordable housing, how has that become part of, how has that become a focus of bread here in Franklin County?
Well, each year, each of our congregations does a listening process through what we call house meetings. So various network members or team leaders will hold house meetings, and we try to engage as many people in the congregation as possible. We ask those people who come to the meetings to talk about what keeps them up at night. And through that listening process, we gather a whole lot of concerns. And then the team leaders get together and try to figure out what are the main ones that are bubbling to the top. And then we have a big annual assembly where people vote on an issue to take on that year. Sometimes our campaigns last more than 1 year. So we might have more than one campaign going on at the same time.
Yeah, our campaigns usually last several years.
Okay. And so it's fair to say this issue of affordable housing kept bubbling up as a key issue for many of the groups.
It bubbled up and won the vote several years ago, right before COVID. And we started a campaign then. And we looked around to see, when we vote on a problem like affordable housing, we then have we form a research committee and do a research process. And the research process went to experts in affordable housing, both locally and nationally. We have a great resource here, the Affordable Housing Alliance of Central Ohio, AHACO, made up of low-income housing experts, from the shelter board and different, major shelters, other social service organizations. And they did a whole study of the problem of affordable housing. And we really benefited from that. And we looked at what their recommendations were. And one of their key recommendations were to use a chunk of the money, 1/3 of the money coming in from rescue funds, from the National Rescue Funds during COVID, and take that money and put it into the Affordable Housing Trust of Franklin County. The Franklin County, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund was created based on a bread campaign of years ago. It's a city-county fund. And they, in turn, know how to take money and work with builders who are in the affordable housing space to create affordable housing. So if you have several $100 million and want to invest it wisely in affordable housing, you go to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. They work with the affordable housing builders who leverage federal programs, state programs, all of which bring down the cost of units of housing, but they also need local money to do it. So,
Okay.
To provide housing that's affordable.
And then in 2023, housing came up again, and we, through the research process, just came to the decision to focus on renters. So we'll come back to that rental housing issue.
Okay, good. That's a great segue. So let's, as we pivot into affordable housing specifically, so let's start off with terms. So when we say affordable, how does one measure affordability? And I'm assuming there are some metrics or some numbers out there. But so when we say affordable, what do we mean? And when we say housing, is that apartments? Is it single family, single units? So let's start off with terms: affordability and housing.
I'll kick that one off. Housing generally means both rental and ownership. It's shelter. It is so it can be as broad as including homeless shelters. But let's just focus on the privately owned housing market, which includes both rental and ownership. The affordability standard that has come to be accepted widely is that a household shouldn't pay more than 30% of their gross income for rent and utilities. So in the case of homeownership, that includes your mortgage payment, your real estate taxes, insurance, and your utilities. And in the case of renters, it's rent plus utilities and any other fees. And by the way, landlords have gotten really creative about adding a lot of other fees to the rent. So 30% of income up till recently used to be enough for an average family to buy a home or to find a reasonable rent. It's not so much the case anymore for everybody.
Okay. So 30% for those renting, 30% of rent, utilities, and associated fees. Correct? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And maybe for the sake of this conversation, do we want to focus on renting versus home ownership? Or do you think we can straddle both of those worlds?
Well, let me add something about the home ownership issue up front, and then maybe we can set that aside. Affordable housing has really come to be a big issue in the general public's mind because there are so many people who no longer can afford to buy a home. So but the solutions to that for the middle income folks and the people who are looking to buy a home are different than the solutions for people who are renters. And it's only recently that we've had such a squeeze on people buying homes. Part of that, it's because of an imbalance between supply and demand. We had a great recession in the early part of this century, 2010 to, I'm not sure when it officially ended. And then we had the pandemic. And those were two periods of time when very little housing got built. So it just put a squeeze on the already struggling market. Market was already struggling to keep up with demand.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, Columbus is a rapidly growing city.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Okay. So let's, if you were to frame up the problem, so how big is the problem in Franklin County? What demographics are impacted most by the problem? Give us a sense of scale. How significant is the problem?
Before the pandemic, the Affordable Housing Alliance found that 30,000 people, low-income people, were paying more than half their rent for housing.
Hmm.
So
Half their
that's
income
half
for
their
housing?
income for
Okay.
housing. That's a huge problem. That's not sustainable for most households. And what happens is they fall behind after they've starved themselves, maybe gone without heat,
Hmm.
gone without other necessities. They can't keep up with the rent and they get evicted.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're seeing large eviction rates.
Mhm.
We have some figures. If you're making 30% of the area median income, which would be an annual income of $29,430. So let's just pretend we're saying 30, just under
Mm-hmm.
30,000. Your hourly income is $14.15 an hour. By that measure of not paying more than 30%, your maximum monthly rent is $735. Now, that income level is incredibly large. It's like the largest income level we have in Columbus. Those are your home health aides, your child care workers, people in the food industry, warehouse packers. So that's a common income. And you look around and find an apartment for $735. That is hard to find.
Mm-hmm. What is the average rent in Franklin County, roughly, or even if it's anecdotal? What do you think?
It's hard to get that statistic in between the census points.
Mm.
And you used to be able to like open up a newspaper or whatever, but I just hear anecdotally people can't find places to rent for anything below 1,200, and 1,500 to 2,000 is pretty common.
Yeah. I'm thinking of somebody I know who was in a 2-bedroom apartment that was, how do I say it, not using profanities, not a very nice apartment, and paying $1,500 a month in rentals.
Mhm.
Yep.
And then, people who thought they were in a good position, they think, oh, well, I'm safe because I'm only paying, 1,100 and I'm okay. Then their property changes hands and the rent goes up to 2,000 because the investors who are coming into the market know what the market will bear, and they have no qualms about raising the rent to what the market will bear, regardless of the impact on their residents, because they're not asking residents what their income is and what they can afford to pay. They're just saying, I can get 2,000 for this unit. I'm gonna charge it. I'm gonna slap a little paint on it, maybe put in one new appliance, and I'm just gonna raise the rent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so these families that find themselves in a situation where their income just cannot sustain the level of rent. So then they get evicted, which I would think then makes it even more difficult to find another place to live. Can you talk about sort of the downstream effects of that then? Because it feels like a downhill slide at that
You have
point.
an eviction on your record, you apply for another apartment, they see you have an eviction on your record, they reject you because they can find somebody who doesn't have that.
Mm,
So an eviction on your record is very serious. It's serious in terms of getting jobs.
mm,
It may keep people from their future income.
mhm,
We have crowded family shelters and shelters for individuals. The city is spending a lot of money sheltering people who are homeless, many of whom are families who can't find affordable housing.
mhm,
What it does to children is the most tragic. A child who switches schools during the year misses 3 months of learning at minimum, even if you just switch schools immediately.
mhm,
So the child falls behind and may never catch up, may end up, later having problems in school, dropping out of school,
mhm,
children who don't have consistent housing, pregnant women who have inconsistent housing, you know, who have housing issues are more likely to have premature, to have children who suffer from infant mortality. Franklin County Public Health and the hospital systems have invested a lot in programs to lower our serious infant mortality rate in Franklin County. And one of the primary strategies is to get moms into safe, secure housing.
okay.
During the pandemic, there was a freeze on evictions and there was money for rental assistance.
Mm,
Unfortunately, that money has expired. It was all spent. Actually, Franklin County developed an excellent program, and they actually were able to get money that other cities were unable to spend. That kept the program going for longer. It was very successful. The landlords liked it. The tenants were saved. But now that the money's run out, the city of Columbus has put a little bit of money back into that fund, but they can't replace the level of federal funding that existed. So now we're we're back to having a backlog of cases, and tenants, even though legal aid is at the court and can help represent tenants, if they don't have representation, or if they don't show up for their hearing, they're just out of luck.
mhm,
And they end up in that cycle of having an eviction on their record, not being able to access housing other places. And that's why one of the reasons, because of that situation, that's one of the reasons that people who are in very substandard housing are still paying exorbitant rents because they don't have other options.
mm, mhm. So a significant financial impact to Franklin County. We've got these folks then who are uh, quite likely to end up in shelters. They're going to end up on the street because uh, they can't afford to live anywhere. They can't get in anywhere. And is it true that and Cathy, I think you said it, that Columbus is a growing city, and so filling apartments is not a challenge with
Oh,
people who have incomes that can pay the rent.
absolutely.
Correct. So,
Absolutely.
and actually, maybe even a shortage. There may even be a shortage of apartments available. And so there certainly isn't, and I want to be kind, but there certainly isn't incentive on the part of property owners to be flexible, to try to come up with some solutions to keep people in apartments. Is
There's
that
no,
a
there's no down.
There are many humane landlords who will work with tenants.
Right.
okay?
We have to recognize that
Okay, thank you.
there
Thank you.
are many landlords out there who have a heart and, and will work with tenants, to a point. But if a landlord, especially a small landlord, has a mortgage to pay,
Yeah.
there's a limit to how much a small landlord can let a tenant live there without paying the rent.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
So
how many?
there really isn't any downward pressure on rents because of the short supply. There's only
Right.
upward pressure.
Right.
But as Cathy said, the landlords who know their tenants have a much greater likelihood of working with that tenant, not raising rents to the maximum possible. But the more that we get that distance between the tenant and the owner, and it's all just a business transaction, we take away that human element that can keep things in check.
And is that trend growing? Are there more and more
Yes.
apartments being purchased by
Yes.
out-of-town corporations, perhaps, or
Yes.
not that individual person? Is that a trend?
It's a huge trend. As of last year, 1 out of 5 properties were owned by out-of-state owners. It's just a huge problem for both the rental and the housing market, because out-of-state investors are buying up freestanding houses, they're buying up apartment buildings, they're either, slapping, as Cindy said before, slapping some paint on it and calling it remodeled and, jacking up the rent significantly, or they're holding on to properties until the market gets even tighter. But that is a huge problem, and it's an unregulated market.
Okay.
It's very hard. This is one of the drivers for why Bread is now working with the city to create a rental registry. And I don't know if you want to talk about that now. We have more questions about the housing market.
So let's talk about scale, and then we'll talk about some solutions. So how many? Is there a way to frame how many people are in Franklin County are negatively impacted right now due to the housing affordability?
The latest number that I recall from the Affordable Housing Alliance of Central Ohio is about 55,000 households. But that only measures people who are paying too much. It doesn't have we don't have a way of measuring people who can't even get into them, who want to, let's say they want to buy a house, but they can't find one that they can afford. We don't have a good number on that.
Or young married adults living in their parents' basement until they can find a place they can afford. Or families living in basements, living with relatives.
Yeah. Okay. So are there cities either in the US or outside of the US who seem to be having some success in addressing this? Because I'm going to make the assumption that affordable housing is an issue nationwide. Certainly, different cities probably have different acuity in terms of how bad the problem is. But are there some models out there that seem to be working?
Well, there are different bits and pieces, and Cindy's the expert. I'll tell you what I know is that some cities have more robust programs so that in exchange for providing a big tax exemption, a tax abatement to a developer, the developer will be required to set aside a certain number of units for affordable housing. Now, Columbus is doing that now to some extent. I think more cities are more aggressive about it. And when Columbus did a deal for the soccer stadium, there was an opportunity that they missed to leverage some affordable housing in the context of that deal. Austin, Texas, which is often compared to Columbus, when they had to put money into a stadium, they leveraged a lot more affordable housing. Cindy, you want to add?
I think that most cities across America are now experiencing this.
Yes.
And for the cities in the Midwest like ours, it's kind of a new situation. For the cities on the East and West Coast, it's been going on for a while. And our challenge is to get enough ahead of the problem that we don't end up with a market as tight as Boston or San Francisco, because that's just impossible for people. And already we see that there are people who are commuting long distances. You could, if you want to go all the way out to Marysville, housing's a little more affordable out there. But at some point, if we don't do something, Marysville is going to become unaffordable, and people are going to have to go further than that. And that just becomes unreasonable. And it's also not environmentally correct. So the city of Columbus has started to get ahead of the problem. They're working on zoning reform. They've already passed the first phase of that. But in order to really achieve the goals, they need to implement the whole package of zoning reforms to make more land available. There's a really interesting initiative that they're undertaking to encourage churches to free up their land, because a lot of churches have excess land, and make that available for affordable housing. These aren't solutions to the big problem, but they're things that can be done, and we don't have to wait for somebody else to take the initiative. We can start doing it now.
So what's the coalition look like then? If we look at a city like Columbus, who needs to be at the table to be addressing this issue? And I say that sort of at a high level and almost idealistically. So who needs to be at the table? And then realistically in Columbus, who is at the table, and what kind of progress is Columbus making in addressing this?
Columbus is a community that likes to work on consensus. We don't, we get uncomfortable if things get a little contentious. So there's if the developers and that the business community are on board, things get done. But we need, when people are being hurt by current policies, we need a balance of folks who are raising up the issues that people are struggling with. So it isn't just the business community and developers who are calling the shots. And I think that we have some very excellent affordable housing developers, but it's hard for them to be strong advocates when they're also dealing, with the city as an investment partner. They can only go so far. So we really need the pressure from people who don't have those economic ties to speak up and say what's needed.
Right. And it's not just, they're not the only ones. I mean, you've got AHACO, which, the Affordable Housing Alliance of Central Ohio, is made up of many nonprofits which get money from the city and county. So again, they're not going to push and be, annoying and put, organize large numbers of people to show up at hearings the way we do. Same with the advocates for people with disabilities, people with behavioral health problems. There are great needs for housing for different disadvantaged populations. They too, if they are receiving city and county money, they can't make as much noise as
Yes.
Bread does. You know,
That
they're
doesn't, yeah,
organized.
we're happy to be in coalition with them, but
Yeah.
we know that if the bread community can say things, can push for things that maybe the people who are more in partnership they can only go so far. That doesn't mean that they're bad people. They are excellent partners, and without their expertise, we wouldn't know what to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
right now, developers in our community have more political clout than people who are disadvantaged and their advocates. Developers have a lot of clout in the city. We're just seeking a balance.
Mm.
I wanted to add one other thing, one other element to the affordability discussion conceptually, which is, you know, I mentioned before about people making $14 an hour, people making $15 an hour. Several years ago, there was a campaign to make the minimum wage $15 an hour. Today, $15 an hour will not get you affordable housing, especially, you know, if you are a single parent with 2 kids, you're looking at needing to make $23 an hour.
Mm.
So Bread's latest problem that we're addressing, and we're just researching now, is a livable wage. Because there's such an imbalance between what the majority of people in the city earn and what they can afford for housing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another problem, and that's a huge societal problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That the cost of housing has so far exceeded what ordinary people earn in today's marketplace.
Yeah.
You know, we're a service economy now.
Yeah. And so housing affordability or housing costs, I should say, keep increasing. Wages are relatively flat.
Yep.
I think it's fair to say. And so this, what is currently a problem will only continue to grow as a problem. So,
without us figuring out ways to narrow the disparity between what people earn and what housing costs.
yeah.
Because housing is your single, whether you're renting or buying, housing should be the biggest number on your budget.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're leasing a car, you know, some people make the mistake of leasing a car that taxes their budget, but housing should be your biggest cost.
Right.
Yeah. I've heard it said here in Columbus that in Columbus, we get pretty excited about our growth and some really good positive things that are happening here in the city. But I've heard it said that Columbus is a tale of 2 cities. There is this growth and prosperity that's being realized.
Yes.
And there are populations that are truly being left behind in that, and who, as we've been talking about, who simply can't afford the increasing rents and then start this downward spiral. So I'm wondering about how do we make are there opportunities to make this problem more visible to the general public? And I'm making an assumption there that it may not be visible or as visible as it could be to the general public. So check me on that one first. Do you think it's visible to the general public? Is this a well-known issue with the general public? And are there opportunities to make it more so?
I think it was the problem of the moment for a couple of years, several years ago. So the Columbus Dispatch did a series about it. You know, everybody was talking about it. The city, people who voted in the city voted on a bond package for housing. So unless you voted unknowingly, you knew you were voting. You know,
I think we're still in
the noise a few years ago, the concerted attention on it. um, from all stakeholders. The city has been doing more, as Cindy said. There's a lot of building going on.
And I think we're still in that moment where housing has visibility, even though there are so many national and other issues that are starting to crowd it out. But, when young people can't afford to buy homes or even rent an apartment to get out of mom and dad's house, it's going to continue to be an issue that bubbles up. And we need to take advantage of the attention that housing is getting. Because I can tell you, as someone who worked in affordable housing for my whole career, that we were always struggling to get it to be in the top 10 of issues that people looked at. And now it's in the top 5 or maybe even in the top 3. So let's take advantage of that opportunity and make some progress.
But before we run out of time or attention, I really would like to pivot to the problems that renters are having in this marketplace.
Sure.
Because of the shortage of affordable housing, people are afraid to report their landlord if their landlord refuses to make a repair. Legal aid can give you large numbers and heartbreaking stories about people living without a working front door, people living without heat, because if they call code enforcement, they are afraid their landlord's going to retaliate either by raising the rent or bringing an eviction proceeding. And the city passed some legislation to protect against retaliation by landlords, but proving that is difficult. So tenants, many cities have looked to take the burden off tenants for reporting irresponsible landlords. And you do this through a rental registry with regular inspections, sometimes called proactive inspections. Just a regularly scheduled inspection. And that's what we are calling for. And Council Member Nick Bankston on City Council has taken the lead on this, has been a real champion, but he's drafted legislation and he's redrafted legislation, and we're waiting for the third draft to see how the balance is going to fall between protecting tenants and satisfying the landlord community. And the landlord community is diverse. They're advocates, the Columbus Apartment Association does not speak for all landlords, but opposes any restrictions as a nuisance.
So this registry does not currently exist here in Franklin County.
It is, and we're the biggest city in Ohio that doesn't have a rental registry. Last time I counted, there were 17, but I think it's over 20 cities. Cincinnati, Toledo, Cleveland.
Okay.
Yeah, Cleveland Heights. They all have rental registries, and not Columbus.
Technically, the Franklin County has a rental registry, but their counties, by the way they're structured under the state law, don't have any enforcement ability. So there's no consequence to landlords who don't register with the county. And it's not a useful registry. That's why we're focusing on the city of Columbus, because they do have greater authority, and they also have the code enforcement department, so you can tie the two together.
And the Franklin County auditor who runs the county registry, was one of the biggest champions for the city forming a rental registry, because his hands are tied in terms of what data he can collect and enforcement. He has no enforcement mechanisms, whereas the city can use all kinds of enforcement mechanisms.
So just to be clear, this registry acts as an advocate for tenants.
The registry is just a registry. You provide information on how many units you have so that we know who all is providing rent, rental spaces in the city. All landlords are supposed to register the number of units they have, name somebody who's a local responsible agent for the landlord in terms of repairs or any other problems.
Management company or something, if
Yes,
it's in town.
you could ask for the range of rents so that you get a sense of, what the market looks like, but that's going to be a fight. That's the registry, but adding on that proactive rental inspection, that's where you get to hold landlords accountable.
One
And
of
it
the key things is to find that the owners would have to be listed. Currently, many people don't even know who owns their property. They know who their management company is. They don't know who the owner is, and the owners hide behind these LLCs. So we don't, even the city of Columbus, without really good legal sleuths, doesn't know who ultimately owns the properties. But with that information, the city will be able to see trends that if there are problems and they can all track them back to the same owner or investor, they have more leverage.
Yes, sunshine is a great disinfectant.
Okay. So again, watching our time here. So let me ask you this question. So what can communities of faith do in response to this challenge? Both in association with bread or in those organizations not in association with bread. What's the role of a faith community?
Well, joining bread means that you're going to be growing the people power that our elected officials feel. That's one thing. Another thing is that, the mayor of Columbus will be the loudest to say it, but he's absolutely right. This is not just a city problem. We can't build all the affordable housing, nor are we just in the city of Columbus. And the counties cannot do the same things that cities can do. So we need cities in the county to create rental registries. We need cities to change their zoning so that they can have more dense housing. I mean, some suburbs, you can't build on less than 2 acres. Well, and they require only single family housing. We need denser housing. We need, apartments being built outside of the city of Columbus. And faith communities can look at their own cities and mirror what we are doing.
Reynoldsburg is one other community in central Ohio that does have a rental registry. And through our research process, we did speak with, I think it was the mayor, or was it head of development?
It was the mayor.
And, they feel that it is effective. So there's an example of sometimes when the city of Columbus takes the lead, then it makes it easier for suburban communities to join in the fight, so to speak.
Right.
But as I mentioned,
we'd like to see other cities do the same.
Yes, definitely. So another thing that I mentioned earlier, and is that if there are faith communities that own land, the city has a program now that they will work with those faith communities, whether they can create a development agency themselves or partner with a developer to use that land productively for affordable housing. So that's just, right now that's in the city of Columbus, but that might be another thing that suburban communities can look into as well when a model program is established.
Mm-hmm.
And faith communities, even if they're not members of BRED, can organize their members to attend our annual Nehemiah Action, which this year will be held on May 12th.
Mm.
And on May 12th, we will gather in large numbers once again to give a message to our public officials that we want to take care of the least among us by implementing proven solutions
Mm-hmm.
to serious community problems and balance the power of developers and other, wealthy stakeholders against the power of the people and people
Great.
of faith in particular. So we invite everybody to come on May 12th,
Very good.
2026.
So if anyone listening to this podcast would like to get more information about the event that you just mentioned, Cathy, or just to get a better idea to learn more about the affordable housing issue, where would you direct people to?
They can certainly go to the BRED website, which is breadcolumbus.com. I think so. But Google it as BRED Columbus.
Okay.
Look
and spelled just like bread, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Look on our website for information. The best source for information on affordable housing, Cindy, would that be AWACO's website?
Oh, yes,
AWACO's?
AHACO, which is Affordable Housing Alliance of Central Ohio. There is a wealth of information, studies, information about pilot programs that have worked, and could be expanded. So that's another great resource. And I have to call out the Columbus Dispatch. They continue to report on housing issues. And we are so fortunate that we still have a local newspaper here in Columbus.
Yeah, very good. Cathy and Cindy, thank you so much. I enjoyed and appreciated the conversation, and I appreciate the work that you all are doing and your advocacy for those who need advocates.